Okay friends, one of the first things we need to do to get started on this job is to take a nice jack with a flat piece of wood, and we're going to carefully apply some pressure underneath the oil pan. Now once that's touching, we can make our way up into the engine compartment. Up on top of the engine, we're going to continue on by removing this plastic cover right here by removing the two 10mm headed bolts. Go ahead and grab onto that cover. We're going to lift it straight up, remove it from the engine. The next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and grab onto this clamp right here. We'll give it a little squeeze, remove the hose from the radiator. Just carefully pry this off of here without breaking your radiator. Inspect your hose, make sure it's still soft and pliable and not worn or damaged in any way. Now go ahead and follow it to its mounting points. There's one here. Pop that out of there. There's going to be another one located behind this area. Next, we'll make our way over to the passenger side, and we're going to start removing these two 13mm headed bolts. Remove this, set it aside. Now let's remove this 10mm headed nut. Let's grab onto the reservoir here. We're going to carefully start lifting this up and out of here. Just flex that away. We'll grab onto our hose. I'm just going to take this and run it through. And then for the hose, you want to make sure you hold it up nice and high so no fluid can come out. Remove your reservoir from the body. Now the next thing we want to do is move along to this area right here. This is a ground strap that leads to your engine. We want to use a 10mm to remove this bolt. Remove the ground strap, inspect it, set it aside. Now we can start removing some of our mounting bolts for this. You're going to find 4 16mm mounting bolts on this side, and then you're going to have 3 on the side that mount to the body. That one's quite a bit longer. Nice and short. Now let's do the bolts that attach it to the body. Go ahead and grab onto that mount. We'll remove it right through this area here. Now that we have that out of the way, we have a nice clear view of our VVT solenoid connector right here. To be able to access this a little bit easier, I'm just going to go ahead and continue jacking up the engine so we can remove the wiring and then remove the mounting bolt. To start removing this, generally you can press on this center tab right here, and then you can just carefully pull down on this. Once you've removed it, inspect it. If you see any funny colors, it's corrosion and it needs to be dealt with. This one looks fine, so I'll set it aside. Now let's move along to the mounting bolt. You can see this larger headed bolt right here. If you just feel right underneath it, you're going to be able to find an 8mm headed bolt. Go ahead and remove that. Now let's just go ahead and grab onto the VVT solenoid here. We're going to give it a little wiggle just to try to make sure it's broken free. I'm going to carefully hold onto it and use a pry bar and gently start pulling it out of the engine. Now that we have it broken free, let's go ahead and lower the engine a little bit so we can access it through this hole here. There it is, friends. You want to make sure that you apply a thin amount of clean oil to this area right here where you can see the rubber O-ring. Aside from that, you also want to pay attention down inside that hole there and just make sure that there's no debris inside the area where this is supposed to go. Now we can just go ahead and take this sensor, we'll bring it in through this area here, line it up with its hole inside the engine, and start sliding it in. There we are. Should slide in fairly easily and bottom out up against the engine. Now we can jack this back up so we can start putting in our mounting bolt. Let's go ahead and twist this until the bolt hole's lined up. Now let's go ahead and carefully install our bolts. Generally, I just go ahead and put it right into the socket. Kind of helps me hold on to it a little bit. Once you have that bottomed out, go ahead and torque it to 76 inch-pounds. Now let's go ahead and plug in our VVT solenoid here. We'll just take that wiring, get it into position. Slide it up in, listen for a click. Give it a nice tug, make sure it's secure. You don't want this falling off while you're driving down the road. Okay, now it's time to put in our motor mount. Let's go ahead and get this in here. Now what we want to do is start lining up all of our bolt holes. What you want to do is make sure that the engine's at the proper level so everything lines up and it's not at an angle like this where you might actually strip out or ruin any of your bolt holes. Let's get it semi-lined up. We'll start lowering the engine into position. Let's check it. I've got all 3 of my bolt holes over here. These ones are pretty close. All I have to do really is just kind of move the engine around. I should be able to get everything lined up. Now for this, I'm going to use my long bolt. Obviously that one fits right inside this hole here. We'll start this in. We're going to end up starting in all of our mounting bolts before we go ahead and tighten any of them up. Now we can snug these up. Now we can get ready to connect on our ground wire here. What you want to pay attention to mostly is the backside, the area that's going to be making contact up against the motor mount. You want to make sure that's clean and free of any debris. Let's go ahead and sand that down. Let's get this lined up. We'll take our mounting bolt. Start that right in there. Snug this up. Make sure it's nice and secure. Now let's get our coolant reservoir in here. To do this, I want to, of course, start with my hose. I'm going to put it right down and through. We'll bring it out through the front of the car here. Hold that up so it doesn't leak. Leave that right over there for now. Now we can get this unit in place. Just go ahead and slide it right down and in. Now we're going to get this lined up with its mounting stud, mounting nut, put that on, snug it up. Make sure it's secure. Now we're going to take care of this hose. You want to make sure that it's secured into its mounting points. So we've got this one that's behind the headlamp assembly. Comes across here to the radiator. Cooling fans for the radiator. Right along there. Get this onto the radiator right here. Make sure your clamp's on there. Then just double check the hose, make sure it's secure all the way across and it's not going to get caught on anything along the way. Now we can get this bracket into place. Go ahead and line it up. We'll start in both of our mounting bolts. Once they're started, go ahead and snug those right up. Let's remove the jack. Let's get our cover back on here. Looking at the bottom of it, you're going to find 2 little pitons. Those need to fit into the corresponding holes that are along the top of the intake. Get those lined up. Press them right in there. Now we have our 2 bolt holes lined up. Let's put in our mounting bolts and snug those up as well. Okay friends, we got the VVT solenoid in there. What's left to do now? Now typically it's a great idea to go ahead and do an oil change on this. When you do an oil change, you want to make sure that you use the manufacturer's specified oil, and typically you're going to want to make sure that you replace the oil filter at the same time. If for some reason you're not doing an oil change, you need to at least get underneath the hood and double check the oil level. It's very common to lose some oil along the process, so make sure that you're up to par. Aside from that, take it for a road test. Thanks.